Very curious because there's 30 people here and it's a 90-person class. And I'm going to run a little statistical study. So what I'm going to do is pass around this paper. I want you to write your name and the last 4 digits of your SFU ID. And I'm going to look and see if there's any kind of trend we're establishing here. Can you do that? Okay, so today we've got a 50-minute class. I'm going to go over some political economy stuff. I'm going to introduce homework 2 and the briefing to you. Then that'll be mostly it. We'll be out of time. So let me go through the homework and the briefing. They are not on the web right now, so do not get on your phones and try and find them. I'll post them after the class. Homework number 2 is due in a week from today. It'll be, as I said, the PDF will be posted on the web in the homeworks folder. And the first question is describe how a good can go from having public good characteristics. So we're talking about a good, and I use an example like a shoe. Right? Shoes are not really good for public goods, but just that's a good, right? Or an airplane ride, or a house. A good can go from having public good characteristics to common pool or open access characteristics using supply and demand. That is, I want you to draw pictures, right, as well as describe it. Here, I'll just pass that. Just write your name and your ID. Describe one method. It will be easier if you think of a specific good. So you should decide on a good, right? But read through the questions and then think about a good. Number 2, describe one method of transforming that good into a club good and one method for transforming it into a private good, okay? And by the method, I mean a change in supply or a change in demand, okay? And I have a footnote here. The good does not change physically. We are changing the way it's managed, okay? So we're going to talk about changing. Oh, sorry. So what happens is there's a change in supply or a change in demand, and it changes a good from public good into common pool good. Then you want to change the way it's managed, so this public good becomes either a club good or a private good. Okay, you get to come up with the description of how to do that. But I want you to show a little diagram with the supply and demand figure. I warn you right now, the supply and demand figure will not look like probably what you've seen before, so you have to be a little bit creative in terms of thinking about these definitions. Note which method uses ideas from Coase and which method uses ideas from Ostrom. In an email I sent you, did you get that? Okay, the email said you should be reading Ostrom, which is about 6 pages, or less actually, because this is it's got 2 pages of references. It's 4 pages, okay, but very small type. And this is Law and Economics from Coase, which was written, and it's 45 pages. Now that's very threatening for people who have trouble reading all the time, but this was written in 1960. The language is fairly reasonable compared to even this language. I guarantee this will take longer than this, but it's not going to take you the rest of your life. Okay, so in the in the homework, what you're going to do is you're going to note which method for transforming comes from Coase and which one comes from Ostrom. Okay, you can borrow an idea from their paper or just think imaginatively about what they're describing and how to come up with a method. Okay, this should not be novelty for you. Number 3, there's 5 questions. Who are the winners and losers from each transformation? Right? If you go from common pool to private or common pool to club, who are the winners and losers? Number 4, if you were a politician, now you're a politician, put on a politician hat, how would you make or change policies regarding the move to private or public goods if you represented the public interest? And by that, I mean the sum total of social utility, okay? That means you're trying to get maximum efficiency. And number 5, if you're a politician, how would you make or change policies regarding the move to public or private club goods? So the policy is moving it from a common pool good to a private good or a club good, right? You're describing how to do that in number 2, but as a politician in number 4 and 5, you're going to, I want you to ask which policy would you do on number 4 if you represent the public interest, and which policy would you do number 5 if you represent your own best interest, as in you are corrupt. Okay, answer questions 1 and 2 with a few sentences and a diagram, which I mentioned before, and there should be about 4 diagrams in there. So that means obviously that you can type and draw, but you'll figure out how to do that. It's due in class, start of class, next Thursday. Right here, actually. Okay, the briefing, number 1, is considerably longer in terms of the amount of work required of you, considerably shorter in terms of the number of pages you're going to hand in, right? It's going to be a 2-sided page. So here's the briefing. Again, as people who are walking in late, the briefing is going to be posted on the web later today. It's not posted on the web right now. So you are an advisor to the Premier of British Columbia who wants a briefing on oil and natural gas pipelines. Has anybody heard of this issue in British Columbia? Anybody not heard of the issue in British Columbia? All right, now you're going to be very informed, more than you want, okay? Number one, so there's 4 questions I'm going to go through, and then I'm going to describe the structure of the briefing, and then I'm going to give you a format. This is going to be printed out, but I'm just reading it out to you to give a little explanation. Explain the benefits and costs of pipelines within and across the province. Across meaning from Alberta. From a provincial perspective, that means BC. Explain who gets the cost and who gets the benefits from within BC, within Canada, and outside Canada. Let me give you a big hint right now, those of you who showed up to class. There are pipelines for moving oil and natural gas from inside British Columbia to inside British Columbia. It's not all coming from Alberta. Okay, there's a lot of exploration in northern British Columbia. Okay, who gets the cost, who gets the benefits within BC, within Canada, and outside Canada? Recommend that the Premier support or oppose pipelines. Now you're going to make a recommendation. Okay, this means you might get fired if you're wrong, but that's okay. And you can discriminate between oil and gas in terms of your recommendation. You can discriminate between pipelines that are within the province versus across the provinces or from another province. Number 4, give 3 suggestions on how to compensate losers as a result of your recommendations. There will be losers. You need to identify them and recommend ways of compensating them. Your briefing should answer these questions. So the questions are there, but they're not necessarily in a correct order right now. They should answer the questions in sections with these titles or similar, so more or less in this order. The sections will be called facts, benefits, costs, information, action. Facts describe the study area with some statistics. Okay? You could say how many pipelines there are, how many kilometers, how much they carry, how much it's worth, how many jobs, I don't care. But you have to be giving information that is relevant to the decision maker. If you tell them that your rabbit likes to eat carrots, that's not relevant. Okay? You only have 2 pages, so don't waste their time. Describe present and future benefits of inter and intra-provincial pipelines. So that's the benefits. Describe the costs. Describe the present and future costs. Information. Comment on the quality of information and how risk and or uncertainty may change costs and benefits. Remember, I just talked a lot about risk and uncertainty in the last lecture. You need to reflect on risk and uncertainty as separate items, okay? And action. I want you to recommend support or opposition, suggest ways to compensate the losers. That's restating the questions that I already put at the top of the paper. Note, you do not have to document your sources. So you have 2 pages. It's all typing. You don't have to worry about, I found this on Wikipedia, I found this on the bathroom wall, or the TV show. You should keep track of the sources, by the way. And as a research recommendation, always, always, always write down every resource as you read it, because the thing will happen is a day later you go, God, I read that somewhere. Where was that? And then you will not be able to find it again. You'll be very annoyed. Okay? So just like keep an open document on your computer, for example, and copy paste URLs or whatever it is, and then later on you might go back and look at that. But that's your own personal reference, right? If this was a real briefing, you would have references. For the purposes of this class, you don't have to have references. All right? So they're not included in the paper. You do not have to document your sources, but don't make up numbers. Your boss will not be happy. Because if you go out and you say, your boss goes out and say, 42% of deer are killed by pipelines every year, then someone's going to say, where is your fact? And the boss will be like, I don't know, it's the person over here who told me. And if you just made it up, you'll get fired, right? In some places, you'll get worse. Format for submission. As I mentioned at the start of this class, the start of the year, your briefing needs to fit on 1 piece of paper, printed on both sides, single-spaced. That's about 1,000 words, all right? But if it fits on the 2 sides of paper, it's fitting, okay? Don't worry about the word count. Do not put your name on the briefing. Do not put your name on the briefing. Put the last 4 digits of your SFU ID in the upper right corner, like where you would put your name, okay? Bring 4 copies, not 3, as I mentioned before, 4 copies. If you bring 3 copies, you fail. Okay, is that dramatic enough? Don't send it to an email and say, David, you print out 4 copies for me. No. Bring 4 copies. Okay? To the class on Thursday, the 6th of February. That's the deadline. Okay? It's due more or less in 2 weeks. Do not submit by email. We will redistribute the briefings to you at the end of the class for peer grading. So I'll describe the peer grading later on, but I talked to you about that at the start of the class. Okay? That's briefing number 1. It will be on the SFU Canvas later today, all right? Probably after the class. And if you have, does anybody have an immediate question? Yeah.
So for the question whether you support or don't support the pipeline,
Yeah.
right or wrong answer,
No.
you support your answer is right either way.
Correct. Yes. I mean, you're going to have costs and benefits, and you're going to talk about the winners and losers, and you're going to say, should we do this or not?
There's a lot for and against.
Yes. So here's the thing. You're informed about this issue to a degree that some people are not. There is massive documentation on these issues, right? Your problem is going to be to read through those things and collate sources and understand, number one, you have to understand the situation. Number two, you have to understand what everybody is arguing about costs and benefits. Those of you who came in late, I'm actually asking you just to write down your name and SFU ID. I'm just curious about physical presence in the class versus not, and I'll get back to you later on that little experiment. So there's lots and lots of information. Feel free to talk among each other about this stuff. Please do not copy from each other. That would be just a really bad idea. Okay? It's okay to debate these things. You can have arguments for hours. In the end, you're going to have to write this up. Your exercise is to be good at writing a briefing. Okay? If you hand in a crappy briefing, then you're not going to be doing well in terms of your grade, but forget about it. You're not even doing well in terms of interpreting information and acting like an economist. Remember, this is your degree. So as an economist, a minimum that you should do as an economist is cost-benefit analysis. This is a cost-benefit analysis. Okay? And there's some really subjective stuff in there, the weights to which will be more personal. Right? Maybe you have an SUV, you have 3 SUVs at home. It's all about benefits as far as oil is concerned. Right? That's okay. Okay? Or maybe you have lots of fish at home and you think it's wrong. Okay, so that's one. Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Any other questions immediately? If there are some other questions that come up on email, I will be sure to email the class or whatever. Okay? Yeah, good. All right, so let's get back to lecture time, talk time. Okay, last time I was finishing with resources, the dynamics of resources. We've got 2 periods. You have to think about the discount rate or the discount factor. I talked about the option values. Options are a much bigger area of economics. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Basically, the value of an option is the value of information. Did I talk about option values? I did I not? Briefly, I mentioned it. The value of an option is the value of information. If I could tell you, here's the easiest way to understand it. If you wanted to know your grade in this class right now, or if I could tell you your grade in this class right now in terms of a future grade, but I could tell you today, you would have some information that you don't have right now. Right? That is valuable for a lot of people. Mostly because people want to be able to plan for the future. They don't want the uncertainty. They don't want the risk. Options are a way of, as a general category of ideas, an option is a way of bringing more certainty into your life. The most common use of the word option to stick with our to look at is from the agricultural markets, where a farmer is growing, say, corn, right, or soybeans, or pigs, pork bellies, they're called, and the farmer says, "Okay, my corn is going to be ready in June, and it's now January." But I want to make sure I have a fixed amount of money in June. I'm going to sell my corn, my June corn, today. Right? If you go on the commodity markets in the world right now, as a farmer, you can sell your corn today to some investor who's going to pay you a fixed amount of money right now. When your corn comes in June, you're going to make the volume of corn, the quantity, times the price that you have set today in January. This kind of certainty is very nice for some people, right? The investor on the other side, guess what's happening? You think the price might go down in the next 4 months, right? If it goes up, why would you sell the option, right? So you think the price might go down. The investor, of course, thinks the opposite. The investor thinks the price will go up. You guys are on 2 sides of the trade, let's say, right? And just like betting on sports, people are betting on the Super Bowl right now. The spread is moving. Just like betting on horse races, you have predictions about the future. There is a big casino called the commodities market, and people are betting about what's going to happen with corn, with pork, with oil, with gold. All those things are, I will bet you today what the price will be in 3 months or 6 months or something like that. So options are people speculating about the future prices or future values. And the reason that people participate in that market is some of them want to get rid of their risk. That's the farmer. Some people are taking on risk. That's the investor, because they actually want to make money by arbitraging different prices, right? Different information. Sometimes they try and manipulate the market, but that's typically not what's going on. So option values and discounting, that's what I didn't spend so much time on, but that's more right now. These are going to be very valuable when we get to the more on the resources. Okay, so let's talk about some other stuff. In terms of cost accounting, one last final idea on accounting and values over time. Remember, we have no chalk, but I brought it. I left my bag up there. The option value of chalk. Okay. We have a resource shortage on the campus, apparently. So we have, remember I said last time, the total value of x over time over all t is equal to x1 plus the discount rate times x2. Remember that? Okay, basically year 1, year 2. Now, if these are just a flow of benefits, but what if we have similar costs? Right? Now we've got costs and benefits over time, obviously. Right? You can actually just talk about it if you want to. You could say the profit over time is equal to the profit in period 1 plus a discounted profit in period 2. That's fine. This is something that you will do always when you're thinking about something of a multi-period nature, which is more or less your entire life. Okay? You're going to school right now, spending money, spending time. You have a cost today because you believe that the future benefit is going to be worthwhile. A lot of you would probably, if I told you you're going to die tomorrow or in a year, probably not so many of you would be in school. You'd be like, okay, what do I really want to do before I die? Right? School is fun, but it's not as fun as going down to the beach and looking at the waves until you die, right? So you guys are making investments today in terms of time and money. And you're getting some benefits today. Let's just say that they're small compared to the cost. But you're doing it because you want to have a better future tomorrow. Right? And that's just the way we do a lot of things in our life. A lot of decisions we make, we think, what am I going to get today? What am I going to do tomorrow? So what this ends up falling into, this discussion is we use this right now for cost-benefit analysis. You'll use that on the briefing. And you can use it for your everyday life. And another way we use it, the way that's discussed, just another way of talking about it, is called life cycle analysis. Right? Life cycle analysis is basically looking at costs and benefits or cost accounting across many periods, across the life cycle of one thing. So what's an example of that? Let's look at the cost benefit of this phone. So as far as I'm concerned, I go to the Apple Store and I give them money and I get out a phone, which has got dials and digits. You know, my illustration career was very short. So this is in t equals 1, right? I'm going to get the phone. Then I'm going to use it. And then what happens to the phone? What happens to the phone? What happens to old phones? Depreciate, yes. They certainly depreciate. Have you had more than one phone? What happens to your old phone? You stopped using it, and then where did it go? I don't know. It disappeared. What happened to your old phone? You traded in your old phone, so it disappeared into someone's hand. What happened to your old phone? Sell it. Someone else's hand. What happened to your old phone? Huh? You leave it here. You just put it down and walked away. Is that right? You put it away in the drawer. So now you have a drawer full of phones. Some people are like that. My dad is like that. He's got like all kinds of crap in his house, right? From the 70s or whatever. But if you trade it, then it's going into someone else's hand. There's a little cost benefit. But then they trade it, and then or it ends up in the drawer. And then after a while, you really have to ask where do these things go. They usually go into some form of garbage, right, or some form of recycling. And that typically has a cost associated with it, right? Now, if we go backwards, we also know that this way, that there's also a lot of raw materials and labor and capital, labor, materials that go into making the phone, right? There's the whole idea of these rare earth metals, which is a very big deal for technology companies because these metals have very interesting properties. The whole point of rare earth metals markets and control is that you need to have rare earth metals to make some of these really cool parts of the phones. You need labor, right? You need capital as well. There's it's funny that China comes up all the time, but like the relationship between China and the world is very important. And the iPhone is famously made, as many electronics goods, is made in China. They used to be made in Japan, and they went to Taiwan, and they go to China, and Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on. So Asia is where a lot of technology products are made. But on the box of an iPhone, it says, designed in California, made in China, right? And people are like, ooh, designed in California, right? So I saw something the other day that had a huge American flag on it, and it says, you know, it said the same thing, designed in USA, and it's made in China. There was an old joke that the Americans told when the Americans were really upset with the Japanese, that the Japanese renamed one of their cities Kansas, because they could say made in Kansas, and the Americans would be like, oh, that's American made, except it was in Japan, but that's not true. So actually there is a town in Japan that is called, right, made in USA, but it's a Japanese town. So what happens is you have capital, labor, and materials go into the phone. It goes to the store. They've got more capital and labor there. Then they trade some money, and then it goes into the dump. Now, life cycle analysis, when you look at the cost benefit as far as I'm concerned, this is relevant to me. I give some money, I get the phone. Then I'm done with the phone, and I throw it over the boat. It sinks. Or I put it in my drawer, or I give it to my girlfriend, or whatever, right? What happens to that phone might be significant, right? In terms of mostly the cost side, and mostly by cost, what's the cost that we would talk about? What's the cost of disposing of a phone? Externalities, right? Such as what? I take this phone and I leave it on the ground outside. Huh? Pollution, basically, right? More different types of pollution. This is made of all kinds of different materials. The glass is probably not a big deal. It's just sand and so on, right? But then there's the heavy metals, there's the mercury, there's the stuff, there's the process of breaking this thing down. This is a very, very relevant discussion for technology because they have what's called e-waste, electronic goods waste. And in California, for example, if you buy a computer, you have to pay an extra $3 as a recycling charge. They take all the old computers, they put it in a container, they put the container on a ship, the ship goes back to China. Then someone in China breaks it up, right? Theoretically, according to best practices, which could mean 8-year-olds with fires and matches melting cables and so on, or could mean large industrial machines that are breaking these things up and taking the parts out of them. Or there's the guy, have you seen the guy on the internet who puts stuff in the blender? Will it blend? He puts the iPhone in the blender, and then he's done, right? That's fully recycled. Not recycled, disposed of. So you have to think of this cost also. And then let's go all the way back to the start. So when you're going to do life cycle analysis, or what's called cradle to grave, you need to look at costs and benefits the whole way through the product's life, let's say. Okay? This is relevant from an environmental perspective because of pollution, because of negative externalities. There's no negative externalities really in this step of the process. I just gave some money for a phone. What's the big deal? Well, maybe in this step here, the materials came from, killing pandas. You got to get the panda eyeballs out, right, to make the iPhone work. That would be, if people learned that there's panda eyeballs in iPhones, they would be very upset. They'd switch to Samsung, wouldn't they? So the life cycle is on the sourcing side. There's a lot of people who are concerned about labor conditions in the factories. Those people are working inhumane jobs. That's part of the life cycle. They're worried about capital versus labor. Are they paying too much? Is the capital making too much money? Is the capital from the government? Is the government corrupt? There's all kinds of discussions about costs and benefits on the production side. What about the rare minerals, the rare earth metals that come from Congo, where people are having a war and 1 million people die around resources, right? Suddenly, your phone is a lot more complicated. But those are externalities. Usually you don't take them into account, and nor are they included in the price of the product. Okay? When you pay the $3 fee for this disposal, that's supposed to take care of the waste disposal. But maybe it doesn't, right? Maybe they just put it on the ship and it goes to Bangladesh, and then they feed it to the cows or something like that. The cows die. So the negative externality is there. Whether or not this fee pays for it is very important. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I did my part of recycling. I'm done. I paid my fee. My guilt is gone, right? Because I have paid my charge." It's a kind of, there's an expression from religious history called an indulgence, right? Indulgences were sold by the Catholic Church in the 1500s or so. Indulgences. An indulgence said basically, I would have a problem because I killed my brother and I married his wife. And I would go to the priest and I'd say, "Father, I've got a problem. I'm not sure I'm going to get to heaven because I just killed my brother and I'm sleeping with his wife." And the priest is like, "His wife? No." So he says, "Would you like to get into heaven still?" And I'd say, "Oh, absolutely." He says, "I can help you out. If you give me $100, I will talk to God," because I'm a priest, right? I speak Latin, you don't. "And I'll talk to God, and you will get into heaven instead of being in purgatory." So in the Catholic religion, you've got earth, you've got purgatory, which is like a waiting room, and then you've got heaven, where God hangs out. Okay? Purgatory, now this is ever, forever, ever, right? Heaven. You want to go to heaven as soon as possible, but you worry, the priest is like, "Well, killing the brother and sleeping with the wife, I think that's about 1,000 years in purgatory. That's a long time to wait to get to heaven. So I'll pay you $100, and I'll be in purgatory for only like 50 years. And the guy's like, and so we make a deal, right? I give him $100. He gives me a gift certificate to get out of purgatory, and then I go about my business. Now, those are indulgences, and what that means, more or less, is that you pay to get rid of your guilt, right? There is another thing called going to the temple and lighting some incense and saying, "I really had a bad day," or "I need some help, I'm going to light some incense." Every spiritual, religious practice in the world has some variation on, "I'm feeling bad today, make me feel better." The problem with indulgences is that your brother, or my brother and his wife, my brother's still dead and my wife is still and his wife, whatever, our wife, is still unhappy, right? So it doesn't necessarily get rid of the problem. If I pay $3 for the recycling charge of the phone, and the phone just gets thrown in the ocean where the turtles are eating them and stuff like that, my money is gone, I feel good, but the turtle is still dead, right? So if you're actually ever involved in this discussion of life cycle analysis, you do not get to say, "Oh, someone paid the recycling fee, that takes care of it." If you throw out your rubbish in Vancouver and the recycling truck comes by, you don't get to say, "Oh, the recycling truck came by, my rubbish is gone. It's okay." right? If you flush the toilet, literally, and the rubbish is gone, it's not really gone, right? It does matter where that goes, because if you're in a developing country, that might go into someone's water supply. Just because you flush the toilet doesn't mean you're clean, so to speak, right? So when you're thinking about these issues from an environmental and a resource perspective, you have to think what really does happen, not did I pay $3 or did I flush the toilet. All right? That's what life cycle analysis is all about, is doing a good accounting the whole way through of costs and benefits. And then you have to get to the most important thing, who gets the costs and who gets the benefits, right? Which brings us to the politics. So let's go into politics, political economy, which I mentioned more than once in this class. And it's very relevant in your briefing. What you have with politics and economics is a cycle. Politics, and I'm going to say politics, is a way of managing society. Let's call it that. Okay? And economics, or politics, is what happens in society. And economics is what happens in markets. And the easiest way to think of the difference is politics is, where does a policeman go, or a judge go, or a rule maker, a bureaucrat? Those are all in politics, in the political sphere. They're all discussed in the political sphere. If you are driving too fast and someone stops you and says, you have to pay $100 because you're driving too fast, that police officer represents this, politics and society. Really, this is kind of a win-lose discussion. You're speeding, you're happy, no one's getting hurt. The police officer stops you, says, pay $100. Now you don't have $100, so I lose $100. Somebody wins. The Treasury gets an extra $100. Economics is about win-win. I go to the Apple store. I give them $400. They give me a phone. It's worth more than $400 to me. I just paid $400. I should hope so. And it's worth less than $400 to them because they manufactured it, right? They're not in the business of selling phones at a loss. Some companies do that, but not for very long. So economics tends to be more about win-win scenarios. Examples. Is that paper still going around with the names on it? Oh, sorry, keep it going. And I want to have a full sample here. I want to get you're just writing your name and your SFU last 4 digits. But, and politics is about this win-lose kind of thing. They're both necessary. You cannot have only a market, right? And the way I describe win-win, it's kind of like, win-win is happy-happy, and this is happy-sad. But happy-sad is quite important, right? Because if someone takes your stuff, that's actually sad. You're sad because they took your stuff. But then you want the police officer to arrest that guy and make him sad for taking your stuff, right? So you need to have both of these components in any society, and we all do. Every society you go to has got politics and economics. The thing to do, though, as far as we're concerned, is think about how they interact with each other, and sometimes there might be too much politics going on and not enough economics. So when it comes to, for example, the government has got the government wants to allow someone to start a business, or sorry, let me say it a different way. Say that you want to start a business. You want to start a restaurant. And you go there's an open place that's you can rent, and you go there and the person says, I will rent to you, so you have a win-win. It's a market scenario. And then you go to the store and you buy a bunch of gear. You buy some cooking gear and some plates, and then you hire some laborers and so on. You fill your restaurant and everybody's in there. And then some government official shows up and says, nice restaurant, I think I'll take it. Like, I will take it, like, and put it in my pocket because, by the way, I'm the son of the mayor or whatever. Like, Total political corruption. The person comes, takes your property away, and you're like, what the hell just happened here? There's a little bit too much too much politics in your economics, right? Your political power, the guy with the force of the gun, has come and taken your property, and there's nothing you can do, because he is the police, right? You don't want corrupt police or politicians. Unfortunately, we have them, right? The whole point of society is to try and keep these things as separate as possible. If they're constantly combining, then you're going to have rich people having power and powerful people having money. And if you're not born powerful or born rich, you are in trouble, right? That is one of the definitions of a developing country, as in a country where people are not so happy, is that the rich people and the powerful people are exactly the same people. If you have a country where you can be poor and powerless, and you can become rich and you can become powerful, then that country is more developed, right? The way that economists measure it, by the way, is, are you doing better than your parents? Is there social mobility, right? If you have to be born with the right last name or the right street address or the right amount of money to go to school or get a job, then you live in a society where power is more important than quality, right? It's about power, not about how smart you are. And people who are smart will leave those countries. That's the biggest reason why people migrate out of developing countries, is because they're tired of getting beaten up by people with power. That's why the guy in Tunisia burned himself to death a couple years ago, right? The whole Arab Spring. He was a fruit seller, and the police kept taking his fruit. And he got so mad, he actually killed himself. Because he was tired. He had no power. He had no hope in his life. He killed himself, and people were like, what the hell just happened? This guy is so mad, he killed himself. And they go out and they start marching around, and then you have a revolution, right? And the dictator of Tunisia, Ben Ali, I think, was in charge. I was in Tunisia a long time ago. He was still president then, president for life. But he left the country with a lot of gold because he stole that. But now they have a democracy more, constitution more, okay? And what they're trying to do is they're trying to separate power and economics, or power in the market. But that's what we need to think of when we're talking about political economy. Natural resources are mostly managed with political influences. Oil, trees, fish, land, all of these resources, metals, minerals. The government has a monopoly on ownership of any of those things. The government decides who's going to get those things. This is why politics matters for resources. Now, the government can do two things. The government can say, oh, you're my cousin, I'll give you the oil concession, right? Or I will, there's so many examples of this. There was a minister in Nigeria who sold an exploration grant to himself, basically. He sold it to a company that he owned. No one knew that. And he sold it for, $10 million. The company sold the oil exploration permit for $1 billion to the French, British companies, capitalistic oil companies, and they're like, we didn't see anything, and then he's like, oh yeah, the government didn't know what to do, so they got rid of it, and now the oil companies are going to explore it, and they're going to make, $2 billion, and we'll tax them and whatever. But everybody misses this whole 10 million to 1 billion jump that the guy paid himself. As a public servant, he gave the property to himself. And then sold it from that anonymous corporation to the foreigners. The foreigners were involved in the corruption, right? The British and the French, they came and they paid money, and there was something a little bit sketchy, something a little bit dodgy, shady, corrupt about it. But on the other hand, they never would have been able to make that deal if the government was not corrupt. Right? If the government of Nigeria had auctioned off that field in an open process where everybody had transparent access, the auction would have been for $1 billion. The auction money would have gone to the treasury of Nigeria, not to the individual's pocket, and the people of Nigeria, theoretically, lots of knocking on wood in Nigeria, would have been better off. Right? This is an example. There's many, many examples of political corruption affecting resource management and exploration. Have we gotten around, everybody? Have you got it? Okay. All right, so that's political economy as an overview. And you should be thinking about that when you're doing the homework number 2 and the briefing number 2 and briefing number 1 and briefing number 2 and the rest of this class and the rest of your life, right? You cannot get a more important message out of economics than this discussion. And here's the thing that's a little bit sad to me. Most of the time in economics, you only talk about this, right? But this dynamic is what's important. Well, another way of thinking about that is a pie, right? Or a pizza. You can divide it in lots of different ways. If I give you a piece, and I give him a piece, and I give you a piece, and I give you a piece, everybody gets a piece. Everybody gets the same piece of the pie. That's nice and equal, right? Everybody starts off with the same amount of pie. And maybe that's me, I'm the government, I get to do that. And say that the pie, and that's fair, right? So that's an egalitarian political thing to do in terms of distributing the benefits of this pie. But then it comes around to saying, okay, who is going to make the next pie? I want to make another pie. And the question is, how big is that pie going to be? Okay? Now, I can have a small pie or a big pie. If I give it to you, maybe you're going to make a small pie. Sorry, but you're not good at pie making. Right? I give it to you, you're going to make a bigger pie. Whatever, bigger. Now, once you have the pie bigger or smaller, you can talk about dividing it up. But here's an interesting part. If I tell you that you're going to make a small pie, but you get to keep the whole pie for yourself, and I tell you you're going to make a big pie, but you only get to keep 10% of it, you have very different feelings about making that pie. You're going to work pretty hard, and you're going to make a pie. It's going to be small, but it's going to be yours. It's going to be the best small pie you've ever seen. And your pie might be big because maybe you love making pie. You're like, God, do I really? Maybe I should. I'm hungry right now. Maybe I should stop. Or my arms are tired. And this pie is awfully big. I don't think I should bother to make it that big. I'm going to wait a little while. So you're going to make a pie. It might not be so big. It might not be so nice because you're not going to keep all of the benefits of the pie, of making the pie. So this is the basic discussion around doing business, being an entrepreneur, creating value, getting taxed, sharing out what you do. Okay? When you're creating things, usually you're going to be more involved when you're going to get all the benefit. If I told you, go ahead and do your homework, but you're going to get someone else's grade, you might think, wait a second, do my homework? Why don't I just hand in a blank piece of paper? I'm going to get someone else's grade anyway. And I would get 50 or 90 blank pieces of paper from you. You'd all fail. That would be very interesting, actually, as an experiment. But if you do the homework for your own grade, then you're going to say, well, oh, God, I don't understand this question, but I need to get the question because it's my grade. Then you're going to sit there and think about it, right? Unfortunately for you, or fortunately for your learning, you're going to put more effort in because it's your grade. Assuming you care about grades, maybe you don't care about grades, maybe you care about learning. That would be, if you only care about learning, by the way, then you would do a great homework even though you weren't even going to get the grade. So that's actually quite interesting. But if you went to work and you were working at a restaurant and you're serving all the people and the restaurant says, boy, you worked really hard today, we're giving all your money to that guy, you'd be pissed off, right? And you're just going to get, the average wage. Well, that was, I think I described that as a problem of communism, right? Oh, I'm going to get a salary even if I don't grow anything? Oh, I'm just going to sleep, right? So when it comes to economics, it's very important to have the costs and the benefits within the same person because it helps them to align their labor. If I'm going to work hard in terms of my costs, I want to get the reward. I want to get the benefit. And by the way, if I'm going to work hard and create a lot of pollution, If the pollution cost goes on someone else, then I'm going to do too much work. I'm going to create too many negative externalities. So if I have to pay the cost of pollution, then I'm also going to work actually less, right? I'm not going to pollute as much, or I'm going to be more careful, or whatever. So in economy, you want the cost and benefit to be focused on the same person. But in politics, it's not like that. You've got costs and benefits that are different people. That's not necessarily a problem. You just have to keep a balance of those things. If somebody is working and you're going to take their money away and give it to somebody else, you have to think, is that going to affect the way they work? A lot of people are willing to pay taxes. That's what it is, taking the money away, right? You're willing to pay taxes because you say, if you take away 10% of my money, that's okay. 20%, okay. 30, 50, 80, 90%, that's starting to be a little bit too much. If you take all my money, forget it, right? But if you take some of my money, so the cost goes to me and the benefit goes to someone else, the benefit goes to you, I'm going to do that. If I get all the costs and I get 90% of the benefit, I might be okay. This is 10% of the benefit goes to this guy. 90% of the benefit to me, 10% to them. Okay, no big deal. Now, what if that 10%, the guy who's getting the 10% is just like in the corner there asleep, right? Oh, I just collect the money. You're gonna be mad even about the 10%. That guy's a lazy person, right? There's a guy actually in Pakistan. He's a politician. He was the president of the country just recently. He just got thrown out in the last election, but he was called Mr. 10%. Because everybody in the country knew that he collected 10% of the bribes, right? Because Pakistan is full of bribery. There's other countries, too, that are full of bribery. He was Mr. 10%. But he wasn't greedy, just 10%. And he'd be in the corner doing this, making billions, doing nothing, right? Playing video games, making billions. Everybody wants that job, of course, but a society full of people that want that job is a society that falls apart. Because in the end, you're like, I don't care about working for that person. I'm leaving this country, right? So we're happy to pay some taxes, assuming we get some benefit. We get a nice park. We get an educational system for our children. We get a medical system. We get police officers who are honest. We get roads that work, right? If you pay taxes and your roads suck, and the politicians take your money, and the police take your car, and your boss takes, abuses you, you don't even want to work. It doesn't matter. It's terrible. It's unfair. Right? We use this word unfair. This is where fair comes in. This is fair. This is efficient. Okay? That's the whole point of political economy, is keeping those things in balance. And you want to have, you're going to have to transfer some money from people who are winners to people who are losers. But you don't want to make it from people who are honest to people who are corrupt. You don't want people who are hardworking to people who are not working. And that's where this balance is going on all the time. Okay. We are almost done. And I'll say one last thing. There's a thing called capitalism, which is where people are competing. I'm trying to make a better donut. I'm trying to sell a better cup of coffee. You're trying to make a better car or offer a nice house for sale. That's capitalism. I work hard. If you buy what I produce, I make money. That's profits. I make profits. You're happy. I'm happy. That's capitalism. If I have a good company, I can run another company out of business because customers buy my product, right? Crony capitalism, or corrupt version of capitalism, it's called crony capitalism. C-R-O-N-Y. Crony capitalism is where I ask you, the premier of the province, or the president of the republic, or the mayor of the town, it's like, I'm having a little hard time with the competition to my restaurant. She makes noodles that are better than mine. Can you inspect her for health problems? And then, boom, she gets closed down. I've got all the business. Because there is no competition, right? Or, I think I'm going to be a coal mining company, and I don't know anything about coal mining, but you're the minister in charge of natural resources. Can you give me a coal mining license and not him? I'll pay you a little money, right? That's crony capitalism. I'm a capitalist. Oh, yeah, I sell in the world market. How did I get my license? I worked really hard at bribing somebody, right? And you're maybe doing better at business, but I take you out of business. So crony capitalism is bad for, it's good for me, it's bad for him, it's good for her, and it's bad for all of you. Right? Because if I'm not really good at making noodles, you're like, these noodles suck. They're the only noodles in town, though. Right? Or that coal is so expensive or so polluting, but it's the only coal we got. Right? This is going to also be coming up all the time when you're talking about resources. Okay, let's stop.